All right, well, Joe Biden seems to be incapable of keeping his foot out of his mouth. He recently said something similar to what Swalwell said. If you remember, Swalwell basically said that having guns doesn't matter for citizens and protecting themselves from the government because the government can just nuke you, which, that's a nice little thinly veiled threat if I've ever heard one. Well, at least Joe Biden took it down a notch by not mentioning nukes and just said that we don't need AK-47s because if we're going to try and fight against the U.S. government, we would need an F-15 with Hellfire missiles, right? An AK-47 isn't going to protect you from the U.S. military. Now, setting aside the fact that an F-15 does not fire Hellfire missiles, this is a ridiculous assertion. First of all, ask the insurgents in Iraq, or the fighters in Syria, or the Taliban in Afghanistan, or the Viet Cong. Ask them if a ragtag group of people with shoddy weapons is capable of fending off the U.S. military or causing the U.S. military severe problems. The answer is a resounding yes. And it's so strange that Joe Biden would say this now because, the Afghanistan Papers just came out, blowing everything out in the open on how the U.S. military has been failing miserably over there, and how, yes, small groups of guerrilla fighters can and do cause major problems for the U.S. military. So an AK-47 would actually be very handy in this regard. Now, it is true. If the U.S. government decided to go on bombing runs throughout the U.S. and carpet bomb every major city and every large town, okay, we would likely not survive that. But it doesn't matter how tyrannical our government would ever become, that would never happen, because a tyrannical government is not interested in lording over rubble. There would be no interest in that. And it would be unbelievably counterproductive to bomb and destroy roads, bridges, dams, power plants, and infrastructure. Then the government would simply be the kings of a giant landfill. So they're not going to do that. So it would have to be boots on the ground. And an AK-47 would be very effective for that situation, especially considering that you would have potentially upwards to 100 million people fighting against them. Although, this leads me to my next point. I would have loved to have been in that room and asked the entire room that if there were any service people in there who would be willing to kill your neighbor for Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, or Trump, to please stand up, right? If you're in the military, stand up if you're willing to kill the person next to you if they have a disagreement on gun control. I sincerely doubt any of them would have. Because that's the other thing. Joe Biden is under the illusion that people in the military would start killing U.S. citizens en masse on U.S. soil, especially if it's something, especially if it's over something like gun control and gun rights, as members of the military generally skew hard in favor of gun rights. I don't think a large number of military members would be willing to kill the people in their own communities, especially with an armed citizenry that has it out for the government. U.S. military personnel would likely say, screw this, I'm going home to defend myself or defend my family. If U.S. citizens really rose up like this, you would find the U.S. military in shambles pretty quickly because they themselves would likely abandon their post pretty quick. So other than this, Joe Biden also repeated an incomplete quote from Thomas Jefferson, in which Jefferson said the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. But Joe Biden left the part off about tyrants. That's a very important part of that quote. But he didn't mention that, which I found kind of funny and revealing. Of course he doesn't want to say that part, because who is Biden in this scenario? Well, he would be the tyrant, and those are not the best optics in the world. But that is all for now. Please like and subscribe and all that good stuff, and take it easy.